Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, I'm going to be giving you a run through on how to play your Balance Druid. Boomkin is a ton of fun, so many different builds, but I see so many people doing it wrong, and it's really costing you games and losing you out on a lot of ratings. So in today's video, we'll be going over what you need to be doing. So as a Balance Druid, I'm going to be playing the Starfall build. Video will be linked at the end of this. For that build, you want to be keeping your dots up on as many targets as possible. As soon as we've got full dots, we're going to pop our Incarnation right away and start getting our Starfall stacked and our free Star Surges spent. We've used our Demonic Gateway here to start kiting away from the Warrior and the Windwalker. You always want to be on the move when facing double melee DPS. So you can see me wild charging now to the opposing side of the map. And if I get stuck in one spot, it's time to start using our crowd control. We get stunned here and our opponents are using Serenity. So we're going to trinket this stun immediately to escape it and start to reposition, waiting for our wild charge to come out while still spamming Sunfire and Moonfire, keeping them up on our targets and spamming Moonfire when Sunfire is applied. That way it hits 2 targets, we get double the value. We're going to get a proc Eclipse. We're going to continue to stack up our Starfalls. We get a Repentance on the healer. I'm dragging the melee into the Fell Lord, trying to make sure that they're taking as much AoE damage as possible, knocking them away from myself, trying to use my mobility. If we get stunned in the Fell Lord, it's going to start to protect us, then navigating through and around it. Still using Fury of Elune on cooldown to generate Astral Power, instant Starfires to get into Eclipse. We use our Mass Entangle and Wild Charge at the same time to kite away from the melee attackers here, while still using Starfall to get our free proc, and then Starfall to activate, potentially get a free Star Surge, keeping our Moonkinor up. We're going to use Stampeding Roar here during the Sharpened Blade to kite away from the Warrior while kiting into our Star Bursts. As we run through these, we're going to knock up the melee attackers. We want to be getting as many of these as we can so that we can keep them off of ourselves and keep them pressured. Here we get a bash on the Windwalker out of range of the healer, and we've gotten away from the Warrior. We've got a Repentance on the Warrior, and we're just keeping our distance, trying to limit the number of attackers on us at any time until inevitably we can get this proc moment where a full moon is called down and we can completely crush our opponents. So always on the move. Honestly, in that lobby, I could have switched for Thorns instead of Alkan Adept, and that's something I recommend in my guide, and I likely should have done in this situation. You can also run short cooldown Stampeding Roar instead of Nature's Vigil and Innervade with another talent, Ursine Vigor, so make you a bit tankier when you shapeshift into Bear, and it will allow you to have more mobility to kite away from your attackers. Just always on the move when there's 2 melee attackers on you. In this instance, I had a Warlock, so I didn't Cyclone that much. As you can see, I think I didn't even Cyclone one time. Just maximize damage and use your mobility to avoid the fight as much as possible. So now in this situation, again, getting our dots up onto as many targets as possible. Enemy Warrior has Blade Storm, but our healer isn't crowd controlled. We're going to use our Barkskin here on the Warbreaker and the Avatar. This is going to trade really effectively with this cooldown later on. Incarnation right away. As soon as our dots are out, start getting our Starfall, start getting our Moonkin Aura stacked with these free Star Surges, and we can use a bash on the Warrior here to Cyclone him. We're going to go behind the pillar to line of sight potential crowd control from the opponents that could interrupt us, and then we're going to peek back into line of sight and just start moving away from the Warrior. Just limit the uptime of attackers on yourself while maintaining dots as much as possible. Just keep at a distance and spend your Astral Power. Do never try to be capped on Astral Power. Like right now I'm capped on it. You really do not want to ever be capped on it. You want to keep rotating it because this is going to activate our proc Eclipse, which is really important. And so we're just going to continue to spend Astral Power, start surging down the War Banner. Make sure to kill War Banners, kill Fell Obelisks. Here I see a Hammer of Justice on the healer, so I'm going for Fake Cast on our Cyclone. We knock the Warrior away so you can't pummel. We get a Cyclone onto the healer. Really good for just getting distance. But while playing offensive, it's also costing me a bit here as we're getting low HP. We're going to use Stampede. We're going to pull the Warrior back away from the fight, out of line of sight of the Mistweaver, out of range of the Mistweaver's heals. And this is forcing him to die by the sword and get off of me in this position. Then we can move forward towards the Mistweaver. I got Bash coming up, cooldown. I'd really like to attack the healer with a Bash, Fury of Elune here. We get into Solar Eclipse with the instant Starfire, so just dumping Star Surge, Star Surge, Star Surge. Forces the Mistweaver to run away. I see my Paladin caught in a fear, so it's time to root up the Warrior, wild charge away with that root combo and get some distance. So this way my Paladin has more time to be able to recover me. And we've procced Eclipse here. We can use Nature's Vigil. This is going to give a lot of healing towards my team. Super effective against Warlocks and kind of rot damage that the Warlock and the Warrior are going to be doing. We have Sharpened Blade on ourselves here, and we're kind of limited on defensive. So this is a really desperate situation. We're going to wild charge away. We're going to Typhoon. We're going to do what we can to kite and avoid damage in this situation and just get distance, heal ourselves up. up. Warrior wasn't able to chase me. Chases me after I've basically have recovered at this point, but Paladin's in a full fear. We're going to go into Bear Farm, Frenzied Regen, Barkskin. We're going to root the Warrior behind the pillar out of line of sight of the Mistweaver. This is another good tactic. You either pull a melee attacker behind the pillar if you have cooldowns up and kill them, or you can pull them behind the pillar when you got a bash or a root and crowd control them and get away from them. So this is a good way for avoiding damage from melee attackers. We've got bash off cooldowns, so we're going to go for a bash. We're going to go for a Cyclone. Get the Warrior out of the game. We've isolated the Warlock here, so we're going to use only Star Surge. And we're going to try and single target down the Warlock in this situation since we have 2 targets crowd controlled. We root Solar Beam out of the Repentance, and we're going to try and look for a Cyclone here in the near future. We're trying to fake cast the Pummel. We get the fake. We can clone out of the Hammer of Justice. We get enough damage to start powering through this Life Cocoon. We jump over towards the Mistweaver because we want to continue to get crowd control. We get that Ring of Peace, and my Monk is able to finish off the Warlock just before we go down. It is really close, and that's the thing about Moonkin is damage is really high, but the margin for error in terms of survivability and kiting is very low, which is why you need to have it completely on point. And if you don't, that's why you're going to be losing games. So focus on your kiting when it comes to melee attackers. Pull them behind pillar. When you have crowd control, CC them. When you've got damage cooldowns up, pull them behind the pillar, attack them. And then when you're pushing in to be aggressive, you should try and make sure that at least your healer or yourself has like a Barkskin or a defensive, because when you're pushing in with mobility, you're not going to have it to retreat away and avoid the attack. So really important that you're bolstering your defense. So here again, I should have played Thorns in this situation instead of Alchemy Adept. I think it would be better. We can start this game by just sniping out the War Banner with Star Surge. Sometimes I like playing it slow and not incarning right away and just Star Surging 3 times to stack my Moonkin Aura up. We bash the Windwalker here. We clone the Windwalker. Warrior leaps to us for a Shockwave. We're not Barkskinning just yet because it's not 2 players attacking me. We're going to hold a Barkskin until the Monk uses Serenity. I want to make sure that 2 targets have used it, and this is a really good idea you can do is stack enemies into a corner with Melee Cleave. This time I'm not going to really be using mobility. I'm going to try and pressure them away from me. By standing in the corner with Starfall, it'll summon Starburst more likely in your area because you're limiting the area that it can spawn. And you can see them getting knocked up, them getting pressured. And because I have a Mistweaver, their throughput is much higher than a Holy Paladin. So if I stand in one spot, a Mistweaver is going to be more likely to be able to keep me alive. And I can just counter pressure them. Like, look at this damage. This Warrior can't stay on me. He's got to get off me and he's got to run away. So this is another tactic. You got to really observe into what type of healer you've got. Mistweaver is probably the only healer in the game that could keep me alive standing still like that if they're uncrowd controlled. Doing this with a Paladin would be a big mistake. That's why I moved around and kited a lot when I was a Paladin. Now my Monk is CC'd, so I'm going to kite. I use Stampeding Roar. I use the Gateway. If my Mistweaver is Repentanced or Hodged, I'm going to have to use mobility. We used Life Cocoon, so now we don't have those defensives to stand stationary anymore. Our healer is stunned, so we're going to use Cyclone. This is a really good time to use Cyclone. This is a really good time to use Feral Charge or Bash to root and stun enemy attackers and protect your team. You only really want to be cycloning when your healer is in crowd control. Otherwise, you want to be maximizing your damage. Shoot that Fury of Elune on cooldown as much as possible. We really want to keep spending Astral Power. That's going to be really important for getting our engine going to get our damage. We get Divine Shield here. We see a double Shadow Fury. I can jump away from that with Wild Charge, dump out some Star Surge, get Nature's Vigil up again, basically on cooldown, just to try and help out with the healing for my Mistweaver. Mistweaver's in an in-cap here, so I'm going to kite and cap farm with Dash. Could also go in Bear Farm Frenzied Regen. My Mistweaver gets interrupted, so we're really trying to just avoid them, cutting into the Starburst, pulling away from the Warrior, trying to make sure it's only one attacker, still in a stun, so we're in Bear Form. We'll root up the Monk. We use Frenzied Regen. You can see, like, use your mobility, use your Bear Form when your healer is crowd controlled. If they're attacking the healer, use your Cyclone, and those are the two kind of like reactions you got to be jumping between. Catch the Warrior behind the pillar, proc out a Full Moon with a Fear under the Paladin. Easy money there. We're going to be able to snipe out that win. But you can see, like, you've got multiple lines. So you got to observe what healer you've got. What are you fighting? Mistweaver high throughput. If they're unCC'd, if they're CC'd, you better start kiting. You better start cloning, and just be paying attention to that towards your raid frames. And you're going to be having a really good time with Balance Druid. And honestly, I really like the pressure of those situations. Is what makes Balance Druid really fun. It'd be kind of dumb if you're just starfalling everything while being unkillable, which is why I think that actually it's somewhat balanced. It feels really strong and OP with the damage output, but if it's in the hands of the wrong player, you're not really going to get a lot done. The purpose of that video is to help you guys out with the kiting so that you can feel as awesome as I do when I'm playing my Balance Druid. And now here we've got Paladin, Warrior, Boomkin. So this is kind of just like, do a lot of damage, keep your Starfalls up, don't really overextend, be aware of Serenity and be aware of stuns. Those are like the two major things, and Demonic Tyrant. You could use Root Solar Beam on Demonic Tyrant here because Windwalkers can remove Solar Beam on your healer with Tiger's Lust, or you can bash the Windwalker and clone them when you Solar Beam the healer and go after the Warlock. Those are kind of your two lines of play. One of them is safer, so Root Beaming the Demonic Tyrant is the safe play. It doesn't cost you any crowd control. Here we get a double stun onto the healer and the Warlock with Sharpened Blade, but I'm not really pushing in too aggressively. We get a proc Eclipse right away. Fury of Elun's going to go back up, start generating Astral Power, start spending it as soon as possible. I see the Windwalker getting close to me. We're getting stunned. Healer's getting crowd controlled, and there's that Serenity. We just immediately Barkskin. We're going to crowd control it with Bash. This is a good fear by the Warrior, a good reactionary fear. Gets all the pets away. But honestly, I think fear would maybe be better for Demonic Tyrant, and I get a Cyclone there. So we have nothing for the Tyrant, so I'm line of sighting it here. The Tyrant is on this side of this ramp right here, and I'm pulling the Tyrant around the ramp, trying to line of sight the Demon Fire, and using Frenzied Regen to avoid its damage. You really want to be line of sighting Demonic Tyrant if you can't crowd control it. And now I'm standing on the top of this ramp, kind of jumping up and down, trying to juke the Windwalker off the side, while still just expending my Starfalls and using a Star Surge occasionally whenever my Moonkin Aura is about to run out. You really do want to be maintaining the Moonkin Aura. Sometimes you can get unlucky with getting no procs, so you need to spend Astral Power, but we get a full clone out of the rep. We're just powering down the lock. We get a double Shockwave. We clone the Mistweaver again, and we can just absolutely clobber them with damage. So respect the opposing cooldowns, know what they are. Warlocks are Demonic Tyrant, Windwalkers are Serenity. So we kited, we avoided, we stayed in Bear, we Cyclone, we used Fear, we survived those cooldowns. Then we flipped the switch. We started getting crowd control on the enemy healer, started using Cyclone out of crowd control, and just really powered down them with pressure at that point. So it was a really well played game there. And now we're moving on to the final round. We're just one win away from 5 wins. I think I lost the first round in this one. And I think it was because I didn't kite as effectively as I did in a lot of these other rounds. So that's why I say it's super important to focus on that. So here again, bringing the Warrior behind a pillar, bash clone or root them. Or if you have damage, you can hit them behind the pillar. That's why I like Thorns, because you can bring the Warrior behind the pillar with Thorns, and it's a really good way to pressure them. We're getting it a bit aggressive here. We're going to start the game with a Solar Beam on the healer. Wait and see if they Freedom or Mastery. If they don't, send the Solar Beam. We get a bash here. We can Incarn right away. We're going to Trinket the stun offensively because I want to get a Cyclone out of this Root Solar Beam and try and get as much pressure as we can. Warbreaker is out from the Warrior. We're going to stun the Warrior. Warrior Trinkets. We're going to Barkskin. Here, we're going to take a lot of damage. We're going to try and Typhoon the pets, kill the War Banner. And now I have a choice. I could either stay next to the Paladin and continue to play aggressive because I have a Mistweaver, has a lot of throughput, keep the Warrior away from the Mistweaver. And I think that's what I did decide to do. Go for a Cyclone here. Got to be careful of Spell Reflect. It's not the end of the world because my Monk has Life Cocoon. The Warrior actually wants to hit me, so it's almost like ice blocking myself, but you do want to be aware of things like Spell Reflect and Nether Ward. Here we can use a Mass Entangle and jump away. It's rooting all of the Demonology pets, rooting the Warrior, and we get a Cyclone with that distance, which forces the Paladin to Trinket. Now we're getting low. There's a Warbreaker Sharpened Blade, so I'm going to kite with that Stampede, avoid damage. We've got the Paladin here in a stun, go for a Cyclone, gets the bubble, gets the bop. They're really starting to fall behind at this point, and then I'm not going to overextend, obviously, during bubble and bop, so I'm going to continue to pull the Warrior into a bad position. This will either get the Warrior off of me, or the Warrior will probably die. We get a Paralyze here on the healer. We got Cyclone DR coming up pretty soon. Warrior's really low, but Warlock's in our line of sight. We're not going to chase and do no damage. We're just going to shoot some damage towards the Warlock. Always want to be maximizing your damage output. We get a Solar Beam here onto the Paladin. We're going to kill off the Fell Obelisk. Really important if you can see that, to be able to take it out as fast as possible. We get Sacrifice from the Paladin onto the Warrior, which now means the cooldowns are going to be limited for the Warlock. They're really starting to run out of time. We got Life Cocoon coming up here in about 10 seconds. So I'm playing in a neutral position, monitoring the Life Cocoon of my ally before making a push. We get a proc Eclipse to see the Paladin sneaking in on the right side. I'm trying to Cyclone him. He's going for a Repentance. We could use Typhoon to stop that, or a Bash, but I do like using Bash onto the Warrior or melee attackers in a lot of cases just to stop damage during burst. I keep it as almost like a defensive. Healer's in a Repentance. I'm going to move away from this Warrior and bash the Warrior and clone the Warrior out of line of sight any potential crowd control and start healing myself up when the Mistweaver CC'd. And this is why I like keeping my Bash as like a failsafe and not so much as an offensive cooldown, because this situation can happen and your weaknesses for Boomkin are defense. So saving some utility for defense is going to be more important. We get a Paralyze on the healer. We're starting to power them down. And here's a great example of a good Cyclone. Getting a Cyclone, there's no diminishing returns for crowd control on this Holy Paladin. We just Cycloned a bunch. We paralyzed him. We don't have any more CC. And he's got Avenging Crusader up, which means he will top this Warlock off. So in this situation, it's good to Cyclone the thing you're trying to kill because you're not going to kill him anymore. This guy is going to heal him to full. You're not going to kill him anymore. We can Cyclone him low, wait for some extra crowd control, time some damage here. Maybe he doesn't hit a heal at the right moment. We can burst him down. The Cyclone also just happened to be hit right when he got feared. If this fear had hit us once like a faster, this situation wouldn't have probably have happened, but this is a really good low clone. This is what you want to do with low Cyclones. This is going to really put the pressure onto the Paladin, because if he gets interrupted or CC'd, and look, he gets paralyzed into a Solar Beam, Warlock is still low, and we can finish him off, get the win, get 5 points on the board, and get 49 rating for this lobby. So I hope that this video has helped you covering this type of gameplay. If you like this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and like the video, and I will definitely be pumping out more videos like this. I hope that you got a lot out of it, and it's going to help you in your climb with your balanced druid. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.